I've got a question. It's probably for you both jointly. What is being done or needs to be done to dismantle the school to prison pipeline that has been enabled by the poor public education, private prisons, and healthcare for incarcerated individuals and overcharging juvenile offenders? Can you maybe both chime in on something that's being done?
Somebody asked what about the mission facility being closed down and what else can be done, particularly in terms of education, using that facility as education. We currently have Pima College, who provides training and classes there, but we are right now being offered, and don't hold this against me, Wildcat fans, I'm with you, but ASU has offered to come in and do some training as well and offer some core studies to get these people further along in their education. So yes, I think education has always been a big key to crime. I think you've heard me say 1,000 times, you get your kids through high school, get them to graduate, we'll see 70% reduction in our jails. It really is key. I think it was Lenore, I saw her backdrop. I thought she won the backdrop of the day with President Biden and Vice President Harris there. You can't, this past bill that went through by the President's office that will reduce our poverty, our child poverty by 50%. I don't think you could do much better than that for a crime prevention program. Get these kids out of poverty. It just weaves in, right? We have poverty, we have education, we have crime, we have addiction, mental illness. All of that is so woven together. I'm excited for the future. I really am excited to see what Washington, D.C. does in the next 4 years, but I'm also excited to see what our county attorney can do. And I'm there to just help. Whatever is needed, we're there. And education is key, particularly with our kids.
Before I let Laura answer that also, I want to follow up real quick on a question for you. Is there racial disparity in our jail? Do we have gangs and gang violences going on? If that's a problem, is there any work being done in the jail along those lines, or is it not the case?
So I'll take that and let Laura add to it. Yes, there is the racial the African American population in Tucson is 3-4%, maybe 4.5% at most, and yet in our jail it's a lot greater. I thought last time I checked it was well over 12, if not closer to 15%. That's even the national average, and the incarceration rates are that way as well. We do need to do better. Again, some of the things we're looking at, the bonding, the bail issues, those things are critical to deal with some of that. I also would like to take a better look. Somebody had asked in the chat, what else are we going to do with the jail? I'd like to take a better look at today, this morning, I get a count every day. This morning, 1520 was what we had in our jail. I'd like to see it below that, and I'd like to see it even significantly below that. So we have to take a constantly look, and again, like I say, it's all those involved in this process. It is judicial reform. It has to come together with their ideas and their programs and make it work together. And I think you have that here in Tucson. I think, like I say, I came on board and was really excited to see what has been done, and I just want to continue it and maybe add to it. Better use of our ankle monitors, our electronic monitors, I think can be done at $15 a day versus the housing it cost us at $127 a day. There's some significant savings there, but we still have a lot of people in our jail that shouldn't be there. And again, I'll defer to Laura.
Laura, you want to chime in on those two thoughts?
Yeah, so backing up to, well, just before I forget, because the chat's going to keep moving, we were talking about fraud, and I just want to say in the chat, the phone number is there. And when you reference fraud, you're going to get to the right place. And then the website's there. So, okay, so that's number one. It's in the chat. Number two had to do with juveniles. It's a huge priority for this administration. We have been working closely with juvenile court. There is a huge community collaborative that probably was born out of what we called the JDAI. You might be familiar. And then for a while, we called it the Palo Verde Collaborative, and it's called NEED, like I need this, an acronym. And it is a driving focus that's going forward. I've been working with our superintendent, Dustin Williams, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at every single level, right? We want to move kids who are in the sheriff's jail downtown. We're trying to keep them in juvie because that's where they should be to get the resources they need, right? The sheriff's jail downtown is not the place for that. It's not his fault. It's not the sheriff's fault. That's not their business. They should be in juvie whenever we can to get those resources. Then you look at juvie and you think, and you study who's there and why are they there at all, and how can we get kids out of juvie. And then you go even beyond that and you say, how do we keep kids out of the system, period? How do we get them not system involved? And in that, we're studying teen court and the community justice boards, which are two, diversion methods. They're quite different. And we're studying the success rates, the efficiency rates of both of them to see what can we do to keep kids out of the system entirely. The overall, my guiding light sometime in the summer became what we must measure success not by the conviction rate, but by the graduation rate. And the sheriff had the stats to back it up, right? I mean, the sheriff is right on target by saying, when we look at literacy in third grade, we know where we're going, right? When we look at, and when we look at what we can do for children in poverty, we can literally affect the entire criminal justice system just that way. So that's the matter of juveniles. Remind me, what was the second? I'm so excited about kids. What was was the second just overall jail population?
Yeah, well, let me follow up on another question, and this maybe will stimulate some thought too. It's along the same line of what we were just talking about. Representative Walt Blackman's bill, House Bill 2713, would be allow some prisoners or inmates to earn credits to get out of jail or prison early, using participating in self-help programs while behind bars. Is this something that both of you would be willing to use, and at what level?
Now, my belief, and the sheriff will commiserate with me here, that we're tracking. It's a good problem, but we're tracking so many criminal justice bills. But I think that one is more in the Department of Corrections, and it's post-conviction. When we talk, and it's wonderful. And Representative Blackman is such an interesting situation because he is helping us with our criminal justice reform bills, and then he also has other bills that are causing a lot of heartburn. So that's a real complicated thing. But he is running a lot of our criminal justice reform bills. Now when we so that's the prison system, right? That's post-conviction. When we go back to the sheriff and his jail, I want to say something that I think wasn't spoken about in the way that it should have in previous decades, which is that if we think about people entering the sheriff's jail, arriving there, that is a question for policing and arrests. But when we talk about people staying in his jail, that's my problem. And so we have to look at both. We have to look at racial disparities on stops and arrests and detentions, but when we go forward after that, racial disparities that linger in the jail and charging and sentencing all moves into my arena. Now, of course, judges have the final say on a lot of this, but we are reforming the way we are handling initial appearances to try to target the racial disparity, to try to stop jailing people who have really no business in being in jail and getting held there. And we are asking stakeholders to send us model cash bail legislation from across the country. And we're going to be doing a study over the next 6 months, so that we can run a bill next session. I think we should be ready next session to start asking the legislature to look at getting cash out of the question of who should stay in the sheriff's jail, and get income out of it, and make public safety the test of who needs to stay in the jail.
There are more needs for services for women who have experienced rape and sexual assaults as the results of together with abusers. Is there anything being done, or do you know of anything that supports more programs for women?
Yes, there is absolutely no doubt that we've had an uptick in domestic violence in COVID. We've had a couple of data points that are just terrible consequences of the pandemic. I want to give credit to the domestic violence arena, Emerge, SACASA, the CAC, just these entities that are so powerful and on the front lines of this. We meet with them at this point weekly because the matter is so urgent. And we are looking to increase the size and resources of our domestic violence unit and our special victims unit in our office, so that there's just more response to the need. And again, also constantly with the prevention, right? Whatever we can do on prevention, however we can partner on prevention, that's where we are. And we're looking at homicides now as well. I'd be interested to hear the sheriff's thoughts on this, but the number of homicides in January and February has been high. We could not discern any kind of real pattern until towards the end of February, and then we do think we're now seeing a familial and domestic violence pattern that is emerging. So that the need is growing, I would say.
Sheriff Nanos, you want to add to that?
Yes. Domestic violence, we first of all, let me say this, and I thank Laura. We do have domestic violence team that works very close with Laura's team. In fact, she even houses some of her staff with our domestic violence unit. It's a horrific crime I just don't ever see it going away. And the only thing we can do is encourage those who are in that situation or find themselves in that situation to find a way out, and we can help you do that. Contact us, contact the Centers for Domestic Violence, Emerge, and those people, and get the help that's offered. So much of this is still in the dark. So many victims still are out there, and they tolerate this, and for the life of me, I just don't understand it. But if I were to plead to a domestic violence person, to be just call. And if you don't want to call the police, call a family member, call a friend, call a neighbor, call somebody. But you've got to get. The more we hear about it, the more exposure that's out there. Maybe we can actually be successful in putting this thing to bed. But it is horrific, and the violence is just accelerated for some reason. Maybe I don't know. I don't have those studies. I'm going to guess some of it's impacted by COVID, but I think TPD had 7 homicides in the last 6 days or something like that. I heard, and a lot of those are street violence. That's again, it's our society, and the violence with guns and weapons. I can't say enough when we have 5-year-olds that are mowed down in their school, and we do nothing about it. It says something about our society. We really need to face that issue and come together, not as a right or left or Second Amendment or any of that. It just as human beings, and sit in a room and say, how do we prevent this? What's the best way forward? Because this does have to stop. And jails will always be there. Prisons will always be there. I'll always have a job. Laura will always have a job. I'd ask you, put us out of work. Let's come together and put us out of work. That's what I'd say.
I'd love to hear. I'd love to see that happen. Sorry, the two of you. However, a question for you. Under some of the justice reform that are going on nationwide, they're requesting training for specific areas on the abuse cases. Are officers, male and female, being trained to handle cases like that? So you're not sending a warrior out there to do a negotiations work?
Well, we certainly are. I know that, like I said, we took a look at one of the first things I did when I was here last time, and the first things we did here is we took a look at our training curriculum and what is it we do and how is it we do it and who is it that's doing it. When 86% of your time is spent on, it's important that cops know how to shoot a gun. It really is. But how often am I going to use that weapon in my 20-year career versus how often am I going to hopefully be able to talk to you and communicate with you and ask you to comply? Maybe it's a pendulum and it's just swung too far the other way. We're trying to bring it back and find that balance. There's no doubt we need our cops to be in good shape. We need them to be able to take care of themselves physically and to deal with a bad guy. But my goodness, so much of law enforcement is more than that, so much more than that. And so, yeah, it does start. Culture in an agency starts at the top, starts right here and in this heart. But it also runs through the veins, if you will, of your training. And so we're looking at those things.
A follow-up question with your training, and then I'll leave this open for Laura if you want to add anything here in a minute. The George Floyd case is now, we're kind of looking at that as a center focus of what can be done in reform. Is there a new standard? Are there codes that the police department or the sheriff's department is working on to have a duty to intervene if someone sees something or a situation that's out of control or wrong? Can you inform us about something along that?
Yeah, all of our policies on reform are being looked at. I should have told you also, I'm in the process of interviews for a community board. And with that, my anticipation and hopes of a community board will be members from our community from all walks of life. But I would like them to be leaders in our community because I think they're going to have the voice that you want to be out in front of these issues. So one of the things I'm going to ask our community boards to do is not just be involved in policy review or go to the sit-in on some of our training, but actually be a part of our discipline panels and our officer-involved shooting panels. They give you an idea of how that looks. The discipline panel consists of all my chiefs and all my captains, and they sit in a room where the internal affairs investigation, the investigator will present his case. Everybody in that room will have access to question that investigator about anything and everything. And then the investigator leaves and they banter, and it's a healthy banter. They discuss the case in a number of ways. Hey, that knucklehead Nanos, we've dealt with him before. Or what is our policies of and practices in these ways of handling things? it becomes a pretty good discussion where they all have some input. You have literally hundreds of years of law enforcement experience where they can come together and say, this is what we think needs to happen. I want my community board to be a part of that as well. We will have our county attorney will sit in there to talk to us about rules and regulations and violations there of employee rights, things like that. We'll have our EEO rep there. We'll have our personnel staff and our training staff there, all to be able to take part in this. And they will make the recommendation of whatever that discipline is, and it'll come to me, and I will be the one to whatever happened. Let me say something else, if I may. When we talked about our officer-involved shooting boards, and I talked earlier about how we want to be able to separate ourselves from our own investigation, so there's transparency there. We still need to be a part of the investigation. That can be off to the side, because that has to be some internal things that need to happen internally within our organization. But we can allow the other agencies to investigate that matter in a criminal matter, and then take it to the county attorney's office and say, what do you think? Just as in George Floyd, somebody said to me, well, are you going to feel comfortable having another agency arrest your officer for homicide? And I said, if I believe that we as law enforcement in our community believe truly that 99.9% of the time we do a good job and we do it right, then absolutely, I'll trust anybody in the law enforcement community to do the right thing. And if it means arresting my staff, that's what it means. I trust our system. I believe in our system. I believe in justice, and I think that those things work themselves out.
Thank you. Paul, if you'll come back online, Laura will have to leave us here soon. So if we have anybody that's in the chat or that would like, do you have any questions for Laura in particular in the chat that you'd like to ask her real quick?
I can ask Laura. Laura, what is your position on the Pima County Justice for All petition to fund representation for Pima County residents facing deportation who now have no legal representation?
This question came to the previous administration.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my understanding historically that the civil division, the civil law firm that works under the county attorney's office, had advised against it. We are in the process of reviewing what, if anything, we can do to support what is a clear community need. In other words, just to elaborate on the question itself for a moment, we're talking about people without any representation, without any attorney, facing an immigration judge and potentially getting deported for life. So the stakes are just really high. We're talking about people who have their lives and their families here. So we're also talking about not only deportation for life for the person involved, but separating a marriage, separating a parent from children. So the stakes are incredibly high. So the question for me is going to be, what can we do simply within the realm of the law and in our position as the attorneys for the county to support what is an excellent intention to fill a gap in services. So that's where things stand. As a human being, like as private citizen, Laura, obviamente quiero reunir las familias del pueblo, right? Like obviously as just who I am, we want to keep our Tucson families, from getting separated. The question's going to be, what can we do as an office?
Okay, I have one more question for you, and you have to go, right? Maybe this is easy, maybe not. How are the courts handling the right to speedy trials as there have been no jury trials?
I tell you that it has, in my mind, and of course the whole year, was before my administration, but to my mind, it has literally been pure luck. I had thought that we were going to hit that brick wall of someone who was in custody, who needed a trial and had to have a trial, and we were in COVID. So we were scrambling to literally look at other physical spaces, like we were looking at juvenile, we were looking at massive, small stadium like conference rooms. How, what are we going to do when we hit that brick wall? And I'm knocking on wood, but it never happened. It never happened. So resolutions were found in other ways, but it's certainly part of needing to get jury trials back ASAP.
Okay. And so if you have to go, I don't know if people can see your phone number there, but it's in the chat, 520-724-5600. And it was at pcao.pima.gov.
Yes, that's so, and that in particular, that's for fraud. That's where the fraud form is and the office number. And then when you move just a little bit higher up, that's my personal email. My
right.
phone number, I don't know how the sheriff does it, but my phone rings all day long, and it's hard to catch them all. And so email has been more reliable. So my email is there in the chat. But yes, and then you can also reach David Contreras, who works directly with me at that phone number as well. So either way.
Fantastic. So lconover17@gmail.com. All right.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for being here. It's great.
Of course, it's been so lovely to see you all. Sheriff, thank you for sharing the room with me. George, Paul, everyone at DCSRA, can't thank you enough. It's wonderful to see you all again.
Thank you.
Great to see you, Laura. Thank you. Love you.
Go play in the snow.
That sounds like the boys. You guys all be well. And next time, I really hope we're all together.
Yeah.
Us too.
Stay healthy.
Sheriff Nanos, have you heard about the group of people who are aggressively interacting with motorists at the corner of Esperanza, La Cañada in Green Valley? They have a right to protest, but they're aggressive and do not let passing motorists alone every day. What's your comment on that one?
I have heard of that. Some people have called my cell phone, which is what it's there for. And I would encourage you to do the same that I've told them. It doesn't matter whether it's a protest or what the situation is. If you have somebody who's being aggressive with you or with others, call 911. That should not happen. I don't care. We understand the freedom of speech issues. Those things need to happen as well. But if you're seeing it or it's happening to you, please pull over, call 911 and get a deputy there, because that's not tolerated. You can do a lot in this world, but you cannot hurt someone or threaten to hurt someone, in my eyes. And that it's just, boy, it's about being a human being and treating people with respect. So please call 911 on those things.
Okay.
Regards to
And there's one, I think the idea of perhaps using the not needed bed for transitional housing is great. What types of education or training could be used to help with recidivism? And could it happen there?
Well, absolutely. And I think that's part of the transitional. So that will be something handled by pretrial services and the county attorneys and the courts. When they are released from the jail, they will be directed to go through the transitional process, whatever that may be, but the courts will set those guidelines up. Some will require training, some will mandate certain things be done before you get through your transitional housing. I'm just glad that it's no longer being used as a jail cell, that it's actually going to be used for something that can help people. So.
Very good. There's a general comment to you. Thank you for speaking with us today. I'm so proud you are in these offices and know you will make a difference. I think we're happy you're there. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, thank
I
you
don't
all.
see any. George, do you have any other questions or anything?
No, thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, Laura, for being here down there. And we'll be in touch with you further down the road. And thank you for sharing those phone numbers and your websites, because that is extremely helpful. I would like to thank everyone else that attended today. Please feel free to invite a friend. Paul and I are working on trying to get more than 30 people to these programs. They are so interesting. They are so informative. So please invite a friend. Our next month's program is being presented by Deidre Abu on immigration. That will be March the 26th at 3 p.m. Please visit the website for the Zoom link. And also our reminder on Monday will go out with our newsletter. So please, Deidre Abu next week. Let's have 40 people there. We will be posting today's edited version on Facebook next week. However, the uncut version is there right now if you wanted to go back and review it. I would like to thank Paul for his work and help on this today. Much appreciated. And so once again, thank you, Sheriff Nanos. Thank you, Pima County Attorney Laura Conover. Everyone else, be safe out there and get your vaccine shots as soon as possible.
Thanks, Chris. We have great respect for you. Thank you.
Have a great week, everybody.